Everyone would take a seat. The January 21st, 2014 meeting of the City Council of the City of Springfield, Illinois is called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman Edwards?
Here.
Alderman Simpson?
Here.
Alderman Turner?
Here.
Alderman Lesko?
Here.
Alderman Canman? Alderman Joe?
Here.
Alderman McMiniman?
Here.
Alderman Tylen?
Here.
Alderman Dove? Alderman Griffin?
Here.
Mayor Houston?
Here. Okay, it was originally my understanding we were going to shift the agenda and put docket number 2013-078 as the last item. My understanding is that we're going to take them in the order that the agenda presented itself. Is that correct, Alderman Canman?
Yes.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is docket number 2013-078 for property located at 921, 923, 933, and 1003 North 10th Street. Petitioner is David Kettlecamp. The present zoning classification is an R2 single-family and duplex residence district, section 155.017. The requested zoning relief is a reclassification to an R3B general residence district, section 155.018, a conditional permitted use pursuant to section 155.018C6 and section 155.2112, rehabilitation homes to operate a business to provide temporary short-term housing to male parolees from the Illinois Department of Corrections while such persons establish permanent housing. Petitioner has been under contract with the Department of Corrections since 2005 and has expanded and was not aware that this use was outside the scope of the existing R2 zoning. The Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is denial. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to accept the staff's recommendation to deny the petition. The chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, could we read both this current docket and the second one, because they're both related?
Well, I think the second one's going to be withdrawn. We ought to do that as a separate motion.
Right. But I think maybe we should address that first, withdraw. If we could have him withdraw the second one, and then we could...
Are you just going to postpone this?
Well, I think...
If you're going to postpone it, let's just take this one and do it right now.
Is this the one being withdrawn? This is not...
No, this is the first one that was on the agenda.
All right. Well, that's fine. Thank you, Mayor. The attorney for the petitioner had asked me, and I believe also you, Mayor, that he wanted to make a request to the council. So before I make a motion, or Mr. Lesko, because one of these is in his ward as well, I'd ask that Mr. Immel be allowed to just briefly address the council.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Your Honorable Mayor, Alderman.
Could you identify yourself?
Yeah, I am. I'm Tom Immel. I'm the attorney for the petitioner, the zoning petitioner in this matter, and the next one, number 2 on the docket. Alderman Common and I have completed several phone conversations within the last half hour, and there's been a development that he and I have discussed. My understanding is that we're of a like mind on this. The Illinois Department of Corrections has some sort of sleeping giant awakened, and in the course of a conversation with both the alderman and I, has advised us that they are desperately concerned about the outcome of this item number 1, agenda item number 1, and that they wish to address the council at such time as this matter comes up for disposition. The gentleman who made the calls is the Deputy Director of the Department of Corrections. His name is Arthur Sutton, and he offices in both Springfield and Chicago, but he's based in Chicago, and we talked to him from there, where he is right now. He wants to be able to come down and talk to the council about this because of the impact on his program. I won't get into that, but he's asked that if there's any way that he could be considered. The Alderman and I have discussed this, and my understanding is that Alderman Conman is going to make a request to continue this docket number 1 item to accommodate the Illinois Department of Corrections and their interest, and I concur in that and understand, of course, I'm not the one to make a motion, but I understand the Alderman is going to make a motion to continue this matter. Have I got it right, Alderman?
Well, very, very reluctantly, I'm going to move to continue this to the next hearing, to the next zoning meeting, the second meeting in March, simply based on that Deputy Chief of Corrections, Arthur Sutton, he oversees the reentry program, and he wanted the opportunity, Department of Corrections wanted the opportunity to be able to consider this and weigh in, or possibly weigh in with the council as to where it, on this matter. And I'm very reluctant to move to continue it, and I can tell the council that I will not be making any more motions to continue this matter, as I know a lot of people have come here to address the council on this, and it's an inconvenience to them, which I greatly regret, but I do think council should get all the information, relevant information on this before casting a vote. So I would make that a motion. I know that a lot of people here, would probably not like the fact that it is continued, but I do think we should, and the council should get all the information relevant to this before voting on it. So that's the motion.
Is there a second?
Well, I didn't think it needed a second, but
And
Mr. Mayor, could I
Mr.
speak
Combs
to the-
will.
Yep. Is there a second?
Does it need a second to leave it in committee?
Ms. Brown?
To leave it, you'd need a second to send it back to committee because
Well, it's
you
not-
already
it's-
moved it here.
It's not
It's not to send it to committee, it's to continue.
It's in
it.
zoning, so you need a second to continue it to the next zoning meeting.
Right.
I'd like to hear from the residents as long as they're here.
Before we have do we have to have a motion in order to continue discussion?
Motion for discussion.
Second.
Moved and seconded for discussion.
My name is Steve Combs. I live at 821 North Fifth Street. I represent the Enos Park Neighborhood Improvement Association on this matter. We had a delay some 2 months ago. This whole operation should have been shut down when it became aware that they were in violation of the city code in the first place, for however many months ago that was. Now we're going to extend it again based on what the attorney said. The last 30 minutes, we're rushing to talk to the people who are supposed to be in charge of this operation. All of a sudden, it's a major problem with their program. I say no, let's move forward with it. As Alderman Cameron has pointed out, there are people here who came here to be part of this hearing that would like to get this resolved. This should be a done deal. Let's get after it. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Yes, Mayor. A question to maybe the petitioner and Alderman Canman. So if the Illinois Department of Corrections if they're in partnership with the Department of Corrections, why at the final hour on the 60th day is this now a concern to the Department of Corrections?
Well, that's a very good question, and I'm a little bit, I'm quite disappointed that if they had any great interest in this, they hadn't weighed in earlier. I think it's just a matter of it's a big bureaucracy, and sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. But that's the only explanation I have. So.
And I have Mayor,
If I may add to what he just said, I can assure the council and the mayor that I got wind of all this about a half hour before we got here. And the department didn't give me any explanation as to the late nature of their concern, but they made it quite clear that they were deeply concerned that something go forward here without their having input. And I join in what Alderman has said. It is a big bureaucracy. They have been aware of this matter for a while, as far as I knew, but apparently it reached somebody who is the head man for this program, who's deeply concerned and wants to be heard, and our city's relationship,
Mayor.
he's not available tonight, he's in Chicago, so I think it's sensible to want to cooperate with the Department of Corrections' ongoing business with the whole community over the years. And I have people here too, and it's inconvenient for everyone, and I regret that, but that is what we are faced with, and I think we should honor their request. I'd be unwise not to. So that's all I had to add.
Alderman Tyler?
Yes, I just turned around and asked the zoning department head, Matt McLaughlin, if he'd been contacted by the Department of Corrections on this. I'll let Matt go ahead and answer for himself, but I would think that we would want some conversation between the city department and the Department of Corrections as well on this, and it doesn't sound like they contacted you.
No, nobody from the Department of Corrections has called.
And is there anything that the Department of Corrections might possibly say that would change the staff recommendation?
I know that the zoning cannot stay R2. Staff recommendation is what it is, and it's based upon the planning report. You always have the right to override that with additional information. That's always been your prerogative. The only solution is the R2, the R3 with the CPU, or no zoning change. There's two choices. If you guys want to hear more information and make a different decision with more information, you always have the right to do that.
Alderman Turner?
So has the business continued to operate while all this has been going
Yes.
on?
Yes,
So-
it is.
Okay, so in effect, if we continue this for another 30 days, then
It will
it
continue
will
to operate,
continue to
yes.
operate.
Alderman Edwards, you got?
Here's the problem as I see it, and I know Dave, Dave's done a good job in that community, and I don't, and I'm being honest now, I don't see the support, even if Department of Corrections comes in to change somebody's mind. I mean, I'm kind of, what I just heard is absolutely correct. What are they going to say that's different than what somebody else is saying? And I'm always a guy that's open and listen and let's see what somebody has to say. And I kind of drove by Dave's property. I've looked at it. It's well kept. But if support's not here, where do we go?
If I may,
Sure.
you're
I'd like
looking
for
at
you
me, so
to.
maybe, first of all, there's, because I'm an attorney.
Let's not deal with the zoning issue.
Yeah,
The
I'm-
question that we're dealing with right now is, are we going to deal with this tonight, or are we going to postpone it?
And as the attorney for Mr.
I think we have a
Kettlecamp,
motion for discussion, Mayor. I think that's where we're at.
But
I just
but
want to
not-
make a
not the zoning
record.
case.
I want to make a full record, and it's very clear to me that the Department of Corrections, granted in the 11th hour, reached out to both Alderman Conman and to me, and made it clear that they want to address the council, and they were very hopeful that the council would not go ahead this evening. And based upon those requests, the alderman is making his reluctant motion. And I agree with the fact that we should do that to make a record, because as the attorney for the petitioner, the outcome of this matter will happen, and I would like to have the department's input now that they've raised their head. I'd like to have it in the record for the future, for whatever might unfold after the council acts. And so, in the interest of making a complete record and have you fully informed as to the impact of your decision and whether or not it's appropriate or not, you have that input, and it's another 30 days, well, whenever the next, that meeting is. I don't know that date. I think I heard you say something about March, but
Be February 18th.
I don't know what the date is, but whatever it is, it's not, doesn't seem like a long time.
Yeah, February.
And these facilities have been operating for 9 years now. So I don't know that another 30 days or so is going to make a whole lot of difference in that regard, but I think it would be a mistake to overlook the opportunity to let the department be heard. I think that might not be a signal you want to send to them, but I can't speak for them. But I would, in the interest of having a full record, like to make sure that I hear from them. So if the issue still is getting a second to the alderman's motion, I would request that be allowed to happen so that a vote could be taken on his request for a continuance, which I support.
Well, at any point in time, anyone can make a second on the standing motion that Sam's got out there.
I'm not going to, your parliamentary procedure is what it is. I just point out that apparently his motion at this moment doesn't have a
I
second.
guess my next question for the two of you would be, did the Assistant Director for Corrections make any indication that they were contacting someone at the city? I mean, it's well and good that they contacted the attorney for the petitioner and that they contacted the alderman, but it seems that they didn't contact the zoning department. I'm assuming they didn't contact legal, and I'm also assuming they didn't contact the mayor's office.
Here's what I do know. I do know that I got the call from Mr. Sutton on my cell phone moments before I left my office to come down here in a full anticipation that I was coming down here for a hearing and my people are here, witnesses, the whole works. I heard what the man said to me on the phone. I don't want to editorialize and I don't want to speak for him. He was deeply concerned about the situation and wanted to have the council be heard. Now, I'm anticipating having a call back with him tomorrow where I report to him what occurred, or maybe Sam would be reporting to him, or maybe we both would. And I'm going to be telling him of a abiding interest in making sure that the department gets on the same page with the city staff. This man was reaching out to the attorney and to an alderman because it was the 11th hour and his office was getting ready to close down, and I can't say much more than that. I fully expect there will be colloquy between the department and the city staff along the way here. And someone's going to be down here to talk to the council, probably Mr. Sutton himself, when we have the continued hearing. And so I think it would be appropriate to let that unfold. That's the best I can answer your question, Alderman. I wasn't.
Okay, we have someone that would like to.
Susie Weisberg, Lincoln Park Neighborhood Association. Regarding the continuance, I don't understand what the Department of Corrections can tell us. It's a zoning issue. The issue is the zoning right or is the zoning wrong? The program is probably a wonderful program. I don't, unless they know a lot about zoning, I'm not sure what they could add to what's already been presented. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have a motion. Is there a second?
We have one more.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor,
Over.
normally I would second a motion for continuance, but not in this case. And the reason is that we have had this on our docket in November, and it's been continued 2 months already. Everyone had noticed that there'd be a hearing tonight, and I think that there's an element of surprise here that's not fair to everyone who did show up tonight, and we've got to be fair to those that did show up tonight. And we can't allow a last-minute phone call to interrupt a scheduled hearing. If the Department of Corrections had sent a letter, something substantiated that we could all look at, maybe that'd be a different story. But we've got a communication from the attorney representing the petitioner here, and from Mr. Kamen. Did you have a phone conversation with the Department of Corrections?
Well, let me just clarify, because I think there may be some misperceptions as to what occurred. Because I had called, when the last time this was up, I had called the individual at the Corrections Department here in Springfield, and I got a voicemail, but it was after the zoning had been continued. And I called her back, I think it was early this morning, and she referred me to somebody else, and that person really didn't have the answers. And then I was referred to a third person, and that person didn't have the answers, and then a fourth person, and by the time that person called me back, it was probably, pretty late in the day, maybe 4:45 or something like that. And so it's that was Deputy Chief Arthur Sutton, and he was unaware that the zoning petition was up for hearing before the council this evening. So I told him, I suggested he might want, and he was very concerned about it, so I suggested he might want to contact counsel for the petitioner, and then that's how this all got set in motion. So I don't know why, but he was not aware that we were having this council meeting, and he told me that his job is to oversee, he's the deputy chief, and he's in charge of overseeing the reentry program. So that's how it all came about. And I'm just trying to do my due diligence and express my view that I think, the council should have all the relevant information before deciding, not that it should go on endlessly, but I thought that 1 month would, while I'm reluctant to do it, I thought it was reasonable under the circumstances.
Which one was first?
I'll defer
Okay,
to
Alderman
Edwards.
Edwards, and then Alderman Tyler.
Never mind, I got mine.
Okay.
I guess, the conversation between some of us over here, we're curious why you would have contacted corrections in the first place. What input were you looking for?
I wanted to find out different aspects of how the program worked.
Okay, and I guess one of the other questions that I had, and I had it for the Attorney Himmel when he called me over the weekend, is I was kind of asking what level of felons do we have going through here? And I specifically asked about it. I mean, are some of the people going through those houses now, are they Class X felons?
The information I have is that there's a smaller percentage of them, but yes.
Because Class X is the 10 that are, the highest ranked felony. If Alderman Cameron and Alderman McMiniman, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Class X, those are the 10 worst felonies.
Well, that would be a question, I think. If there was somebody from the Department of Corrections, they could certainly, we'd know we would be getting the correct answers from the horse's mouth.
Well, I looked it up. I am married to an attorney. While I was talking to Tom, we looked it up. And among the Class X felonies, most of them involve guns, murder. There was only one that didn't seem as dangerous as the others, and that was possession of controlled substance with intention to sell. But I mean, if there were a number of Class X felons coming through those houses, then I would say that is something which would highly concern me if I was living there.
Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, is there a second to the motion? Hearing no second for the motion, motion dies. Is there a motion?
Yes, I make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Is there a second?
What's the effect of that motion?
To deny the petition.
It'll shut him down.
Deny petition.
Second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and to deny the petition. Discussion.
Are you deferring to me?
If you want
Mr. Mayor,
to address the council.
Mr. Mayor, at this point, in deference, I guess I didn't think this would happen, so now I'm readjusting my thinking. Would you like to put this on hold for a minute or a little time, because this is going to take a while to accommodate the other
Mayor,
ones?
I'm going to make a motion. It seems like council would like a little more time. I would make a motion that we put this to the last end of our agenda, zoning agenda, and deal with the other zoning cases first. Is that what you were?
Well, it seemed to me sensible. There's a lot of people in this room who have nothing to do with this matter, who are here for the other items that I understood were brief. And
While we've done that in the past, I don't see why you can't.
I agree. I'm fine with it.
I just ask our Assistant Corporation Counsel, we have a motion and a second. We can go ahead and postpone this to the last, but the motion and second remains.
Yes.
Is there a motion? I would accept a motion to delay this to the last zoning item.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes.
Aye.
Those opposed vote no.
Need a vote voice, or you want it up on?
Okay, all those in favor say yes, those opposed say nay.
Yes.
Motion carries. So we'll pick this up after we do the other zoning cases. Okay, the next item then is zoning agenda docket number 2013-079 for property located at 922 Enterprise Street. The petitioner is Monica Robles. Present zoning classification is an R2, single-family and duplex residence district. They're asking for a reclassification to an R3B. Is my understanding this is going to be withdrawn?
I move at this time to withdraw this matter. It's moot.
Okay, the petitioner is withdrawn the matter. The next item on the zoning agenda is docket number 2013-073 for property located at 6 Fairview. The petitioner is Janice M. Salini. The present zoning classification is an R1 single-family residence district, section 155.016. The requested zoning relief is a variance of the Lake Land Use Plan, Appendix A, Section 3, setbacks of a side yard, 10 feet setback from the side property line requirement to allow construction of an addition to the northwest side of the existing structure, with the southwest corner being 6 feet from the property line and the northwest corner being on the property line. The intended use of the addition is a garage. CWLP recommendation was denial. The Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to approve the petition as submitted for a variance of the Lake Land Use Plan, Appendix A, Section 3, setbacks of a side yard, 10 feet setback from the side property line requirement, to allow construction of an addition to the northwest side of the existing structure, with the southwest corner being 6 feet from the property line and the northwest corner being on the property line. The chair will entertain a motion.
Make the recommendation to approve planning and zoning recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, which is to approve the petition as submitted for a variance of the Lake Land Use Plan, Appendix A, Section 3, setbacks of a side yard, 10 feet setback from the side property requirement, to allow construction of an addition to the northwest side of the existing structure, with the southwest corner being 6 feet from the property line and the northwest corner being on the property line. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes, those opposed vote no. Motion passes 10-0. The next item on the zoning agenda is docket number 2013-092 for property located at 1044 East Stanford Avenue. The petitioner is Joan D. Hottie. The present zoning classification is an S1, Neighborhood Commercial and Office District, Section 155.030. The requested zoning relief is a conditional permitted use pursuant to Section 155.030. Conditional permitted uses in the S1, Neighborhood Commercial and Office District, and a variance of Section 155.200, taverns within 100 feet of a residentially zoned lot. The Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval. Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to approve the petition as submitted, with the condition that there be no outside seating, no live music, and provided that the business has a greater of a majority of its revenue from sources other than the sale of alcohol. The chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the petition as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the petition as submitted. Discussion?
Oh, with those conditions and no.
Okay. Well, we approve the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is to approve the petition as submitted, with a condition that there be no outside seating, no live music, and provided that the business has greater than the majority of its revenues from sources other than the sale of alcohol. Discussion. Here. Okay. Okay. Is there anyone that wanted to address the council? If you'd step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Kevin Mahalchuk, and I live at 2518 South 7th, Harvard Park neighborhood. I'd like to start off, Mayor, by letting you know yesterday there's some activities down at Harvard Park where we undertook a process to clear the debris that had fallen from the recent ice storm, collect into one spot so that when the Public Works Department comes into our neighborhood, they reserve their resources and clean that up, and it's in long lines with Corey Job's beautification, Ward 6. So just a breath of fresh air for you, and probably good to hear good news once in a while.
Well, and thank you for your efforts.
And
We
it's our
appreciate
way
it.
of doing what we can for the city, as opposed to asking what the city can do for us. So along those lines, sir, there was a recent history or incident or situation where Alderwoman Simpson had clarified a misunderstanding where the council members are public servants. And I have to go along with that. And with that in mind, I think public servants implies serving the public. We're here representing the public tonight. And in an ideal world, I think just our representation as an objective is to docket number 092 here would be significant to serve the public. But we don't live in an ideal world. And with that in mind, my understanding of a variation approval also requires a need. And in this particular location, we don't see where a need is substantiated. Right across the street, there's a facility, Enders. Tom Enders runs that facility, third generation, 80 years now that the facility's been ran. Amazing in itself. And provides the very same services that this establishment, this endeavor pursues, or hopes to pursue. I spoke with Tom, entered his facility recently, unannounced, it's quiet, there's no loud music, there's no vulgar language, and there is gambling. So I don't see the need in that regard for this variance. And you know, unless those needs are served, I think the zoning as placed should be maintained, and that's how we keep order and cooperation, I guess, among all interested groups. Also, another need that should be, or that we need to consider, is from a social aspect, and that being everybody here knows that gambling is addictive behavior, no surprise. Unfortunately, it's our economic situation that's, I guess, compromising what might be normally a moral considerations, and I understand that. But at the same time, gambling as an addictive behavior is one of the hardest to cure. And you can look at the National Football League. They will not consider a prospect, a college prospect coming into the league, if there's a known gambling problem, even though they would give tolerance for alcohol or substance abuse, believe it or not. Gambling is that critical of a psychological impairment, a behavioral disorder. And by granting this variance tonight, what the City Council is in essence saying is that we're willing to weave that behavioral disorder into our social fabric. Yeah, and I understand there are economic issues that are pressing us in this day and age, and you know, it's sad that we've come to this, but that's where it's at. But all we can ask tonight, as a public voice, is that you consider yourself as a public servant and serve us as the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Mark Rabin, attorney. I represent the petitioner. We heard these same comments, if you will, objections at the zoning hearing. This is appropriate use of property. It's an appropriate zoning classification. The staff recommends it. The Plan Commission recommends it. The idea of zoning is not to block competition. If we had that as a reason to deny zoning, we would never approve any commercial zoning because it would always be in competition with an already existing business. The City Council has already spoken as a matter of policy to allow gambling within the City of Springfield. We ask that this be approved. The people who will be leasing this property and operating this facility have 3 or 4 other licensed liquor licensed establishment in the city, some with gambling. They have never had any problems. They have never had any complaints about them. They will operate a very appropriate business. The provision that the revenues not exceed, from sale of alcohol, not exceed 50% are more than agreed to. The only reason for a liquor license for an establishment like this is to qualify for the gambling license. If you didn't need the liquor license, they wouldn't even be asking for it. So we ask that this be approved and that the owner of the property be able to economically use her property and the operators be allowed to operate a legitimate, well-run business. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Is there anybody else who would like to address the council? If not, Alderman Simpson.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, this was mislabeled. It is Ward 6 and not Ward 2. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, thank you to the city clerk's office for providing information regarding the number of gambling parlors that we now have within the city. We now have approaching 90 establishments with gambling machines for a total of roughly 380 machines. So we have a proliferation of gambling parlors now in the city, and much of the lost gambling money does leave our city. If the city raises $1 million of revenue this coming year, it means there will have been $20 million of losses, and those losses get distributed to the owners of the machines, which are typically non-local owners, and to the owners of the establishments. In this case, this may be a local owner, but many of the owners of the establishments are foreign to our city, and of course the state of Illinois gets its revenue. So as in previous cases like this, I'll be voting no.
Further discussion? Being no further discussion, we have a motion and a second to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor vote yes, those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Motion passes 7-3. The next item on the zoning agenda is docket number 2013-093 for property located at 2620 Selker. The petitioner is Jane Herstein. The present zoning classification is an R2 single-family and duplex residence district, section 155.017. The requested zoning relief is a variance of section 155.112, surfacing to allow petitioner to park on an unpaved rock area driveway extension. The Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is denial. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to deny the petition as submitted, but grant a variance of the surfacing to allow it to stay gravel for a term of 2 years. The chair will entertain a motion.
Move to accept the Springfield, Sangamon County Regional Planning Zoning Commission's recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the recommendation of the Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission and deny the petition.
No, I'm sorry.
That's what you...
I'm sorry. I was Planning and Zoning Commission. Sorry, Mayor. Second.
Okay.
You want to pass this?
Yes, I do.
There you go.
Further discussion?
Sorry. Well, is the motion...
The motion is, we have a motion and a second to accept the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, which is to deny the petition as submitted, but grant a variance of the surface to allow it to stay gravel for a term of 2 years. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes, those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Motion passes 10-0. The next item on the zoning agenda is docket number 2013-094 for property located at 3045 Stanton Avenue. The petitioner is New Singular Wireless PCS LLC leasee. The present zoning classification is a B1 Highway Business Service District, section 155.033. The requested zoning relief is a variance of sections 155.033, and 155.407, conditional permitted use, wireless telecommunication facilities, antennas, monopoles, towers, and satellite dishes, and a variance of Section 155.001, definitions, to construct a monopole-type telecommunications tower towards the rear of the property as a second use on the same zoning lot. The Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to approve the petition as submitted for a variance of Section 155.033 and 155.407, conditional permitted use, wireless telecommunications facilities, antenna, monopoles, towers, and satellite dishes, and a variance of Section 155.001, definitions, to construct a monopole-type telecommunications tower towards the rear of the property as a second use on the same zoning lot. Discussion?
Move to approve the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, which is to approve the petition as submitted for a variance of Sections 155.033 and 155.407, conditional permitted use, wireless telecommunication facilities, antennas, monopoles, towers, and satellite dishes, and a variance of Section 155.001, definitions, to construct a monopole-type telecommunications tower towards the rear of the property as a second use on the same zoning lot. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Motion passes 10-0.
Thank you, Mayor.
The next item on the zoning agenda is docket number 2013-095 for property located at 253-255 Bellerive Road. The petitioners are Judith Hood and Wanda Champion. The present zoning classification is an R2 single-family and duplex residence district, section 155.017. The requested zoning relief is a variance of section 155.055, minimum lot width for residences, to allow a lot width of 31.07 feet for Unit 1 and 28.82 feet for Unit 2 instead of the 35 feet per unit required. The Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to approve the petition as submitted for a variance of section 155.055, minimum lot width for residences, to allow a lot of 31.07 feet for Unit 1 and 28.82 feet for Unit 2 instead of the 35 feet per unit required. The Chair will entertain a motion.
Move to accept the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes. Those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Motion passes 10-0. The next item on the zoning agenda is docket number 2013-096 for property located at 3319 through 3321 Redbud Lane. The petitioner is Joanne Bortmus and Pamela S. Harmon. The present zoning classification is an R3B, General Residence District, Section 155.018. The requested zoning relief, a variance of Section 155.061, Basic Yard Requirements, to allow a rear yard setback of 12 feet instead of the 20 feet required, and to allow the structure to be changed from a condo legal description to a party wall legal description for ease of resale. The Springfield-Sangamon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to approve the petition for a variance of Section 155.061, Basic Yard Requirements, to allow the rear yard setback of 12 feet instead of the 20 feet required. The Chair will entertain a motion.
Approve and accept Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and approve the petition for a variance of Section 155.061, Basic Yard Requirements, to allow a rear yard setback of 12 feet instead of the 20 feet required. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes. Those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Motion passes 10-0. We will now revert back to docket number 2013-078 for property located at 921, 923, 933, and 10003 North 10th Street. Again, the petitioner is David Kettlecamp. The present zoning classification is an R2 Single Family and Duplex Residence District, Section 155.017. The requested zoning relief reclassification to an R3B General Residence District, Section 155.018, a conditional permitted use pursuant to Section 155.018C6 and Section 155.2112. Rehabilitation homes to operate a business to provide temporary short-term housing to male parolees from the Illinois Department of Corrections, while such persons establish permanent housing. Petitioner has been under contract with the Department of Corrections since 2005 and has expanded and was not aware the use was outside the scope of the existing R2 zoning. The Springfield Salmon County Regional Planning Commission recommendation is denial. The Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation is to accept the staff recommendation to deny the petition. We have a motion and a second to deny the petition. Discussion.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Again, I'm Tom Immel. I represent Mr. Kettlecamp. Mr. Kettlecamp is here, and at this moment, there are 5 persons that we've been told would want to be speaking on his behalf who are here, and 2 more are expected, but you haven't seen them yet because of their other employment schedules. You've read into the record part of what I could say, which is that, I'll put it another way, Mr. Kettlecamp is now entering into his 10th year of operation in this year. And he initially rented and then bought the 4 properties which are the subject of this petition. Subject to mortgages and an investment of over $100,000. He's brought them up to shape. They were devastated properties. And anybody who looks will know that they are in good condition. And indeed, their neighbor across the street, who's written a letter of support, a fellow at Beaver Creek Woodworks, says that they're the best maintained houses in the neighborhood and that Dave has been a great neighbor. There are 2 letters of support from that group. Also, the accountant who works there in the building, Mr. Kruger, and Mr. Brinkman have both written. And you have their records, their letters. There is a contract with the Department of Corrections, which has been in place, as modified from time to time since '05, wherein Mr. Kettlecamp undertakes primarily to provide a temporary residence for people going on parole who don't have a fixed place to go when they're released. This replaced the old practice of simply putting them on a bus and returning them to the county from whence they'd been convicted and letting them go about their business, which included homelessness and everything else that goes with that. This program was established to move people out in an orderly way, and these are called transitional housing. The term rehabilitative housing is not used in the Department of Corrections terminology and contract. It does appear in our zoning ordinance. Our houses are not, in fact, rehabilitation homes. People are supposed to have been rehabilitated before they get to us, and they get to us just for transitional housing until they have a permanent address, so as to leave them not wandering the street. The second thing we attempt to do is to help them get employment. That's the second charge that we have, and in that regard, we take them to services like the Tower of, I can't say the name of it,
Tower of Refuge, I think.
there you go, thank you. Tower of Refuge. We work with them, they assist us, they also help us get credentials, IDs, things like that for these people. And they seek to get employment. Once it's been determined that they have a fixed residence that they can go to, they are released from the program to that residence. That could happen sooner than 60 days. Their supposed outside date with the program is 60 days. They might stay as long as 90. If they don't have a permanent residence to go to within that time, they are returned to the Department of Corrections. It just didn't work. Mr. Kettlecamp has processed on the order of 400 people through this program since he started it. And he's reported in the documents you already have that were submitted below, I say below, I'm talking about the zoning commission. He's got about a 63% success rate with people coming in the program, leaving and finding both employment and housing. And about 37% end up back at the Department of Corrections because it failed. That is a pretty good percentage. It certainly beats the recidivism rate that we hear about in the state of Illinois, which is 55%. People are back in the slammer within 3 years of the time they're released. Mr. Kettlecamp's people seem to do better than that, and that's encouraging. There's been a substantial investment in the property. It is now Mr. Kettlecamp's sole livelihood. He formerly owned a business that detailed automobiles called Rainbow on North Grand Avenue, not far from Pillsbury Mills. That business was forced to close because of the recession, and so now this is his sole business and means of support. He operates 4 houses at the present time. There had been a 5th. We abandoned that in that earlier petition. There are currently, as I stand here, 19 residents. And that number varies from month to month. But the absolute limit is 5 people per house. That's established by the state fire marshal, who inspected all these properties when they were remodeled and approved them. The zoning issue never came up when they were purchased. The properties had been used as rental properties. They had multiple people, related and unrelated, living in these various houses as tenants of the former owner. It was chaos. It was a crime scene, and that's what Mr. Kettlecamp moved into, and he cleaned it all up and operates the houses, which are the best-looking properties in the neighborhood, which is otherwise extremely blighted. If you start at Phillips on 10th Street and proceed north, you will find that all the houses that remain standing and are occupied belong to Mr. Kettlecamp, with the exception of 925 North 10th Street, which is occupied by our next-door neighbor, a gentleman named Poprop, who has a wife and 2 children and who raises dogs there and breeds them in the backyard. And we don't have any problem with him, and he seems to have none with us. And then after that, there's one blighted house left yet that hasn't been torn down, but all the rest of the block is city-owned empty lots. The city's torn down the houses. Moving directly across to the north, one more house at the corner of Enterprise and 10th Street, which is in Alderman Lesko's ward. That's 1003 North 10th Street. Is got an improved home next to it, which is in good condition and occupied, and then an abandoned house right next to it, which ought to be torn down, and then a whole series of empty lots or torn down buildings all the way till you get to Division. The entire area can fairly be described as blighted. It's occurred over time, and it's irreversible. And now, with the indication that the railroad is going to be taking all of this over, including this property, all the properties here, when it does its relocation, 10 years out or so, there's no future for anybody improving any of the existing properties out there. They'd be insane to invest money in them now, because the chances of getting it back would be pretty remote. So, we have a very blighted neighborhood with nothing across the street from us except the railroad tracks and the good people over at the Beaver Creek Woodworks, and you have to go a ways until you finally encounter 11th Street. And we don't have any interaction with the folks over there. We're a good distance off. Indeed, we don't have much interaction with anybody because we don't want to. We are in an island of sorts, Kettlecamp Island, Rainbow Island. Behind us, we have a problem, and that is the properties across the alley from us which front on 9th Street. There we have, in the first block, I believe, 5 boarded-up houses, or maybe 3 boarded-up houses and 3 that are vacant and have no trespassing signs in a window, and all of which are being used by homeless and other type persons for various and sundry reasons, sometimes as shelters, sometimes as drug houses, sometimes to accommodate prostitution. And they bring with them a host of problems which our neighborhood police officer, Joe Arnold, could speak to. He's dealt with them all the time. He was in the room a moment ago, I saw him. It's miserable conditions, and I'm not going to leave this out because it'll be pointed to by other folks later, I'm sure. In June of this year, a person who was a resident in the Kettle Camp Rainbow program cut off his electronic bracelet and fled. And what happened after that, I'm not sure the details, but he got into an encounter with homeless people across the alley on the 9th Street properties, and during the course of which a woman, homeless person, lost her life. I don't know any of the circumstances, and the man, as I understand, in jail, and so charged. See how that turns out. This happened immediately next door to another 9th Street house where on New Year's Eve, I believe, last year, there was a double murder. Man and woman had their lives taken with what is suspected to have been a failed drug transaction, but nobody knows for sure, and the crime, I believe, is carried as unsolved at this point. There's been another murder north of Enterprise on 9th Street, I'm told, not too far from what's known as Oscar's Tavern. And then over, of course, in Enos Park, across the way, because this is not in Enos Park, this is in Pillsbury Mills, and it's not within the Enos Park boundaries. Enos Park's had a couple of murders over on 8th Street near Phillips, as I'm understanding it, all of which occurred within the last year or two. Gunshots involved in those. And I've seen the articles in the paper that Enos Park has been fighting valiantly against a crime wave that goes on largely at the eastern side of their park boundaries, which would take them up to 9th Street. It's a fight that they've been fighting for a long time. I admire their fortitude and attention to the neighborhood. It's changed a lot since I moved here in 1970 when it was a total wreck. In any event, we've had that incident. We are not the source of any crime problem in the neighborhood. Our people have no interest in having interaction with the police. The last thing they want to do is do anything but just get out of there. They're on 24/7 electronic monitoring bracelets. When they depart unauthorized, we know instantly. The man who cut off his bracelet and did what he did, for example, we knew about right away, and we're the ones who called the police. Mr. Kettlecamp is. Mr. Kettlecamp closely supervises what happens. In looking through police reports of incidents that have occurred in the neighborhood, it's been he that reported many and flagged down passing squad cars because he'd observed something going on that was out of line, not necessarily in his property, but in the area. He's credited with having done a good job, again, by his neighbors who wrote their letters and witnesses that I intend to be making available to you who wish to speak. I mentioned that we're in Pillsbury Mills. I put out I reached out to try and locate someone to speak to there and ended up leaving phone messages and never got a response. To my knowledge, Pillsbury Mills, I know they didn't have any representative appear below. Is anybody from Pillsbury Mills Association present? No, I didn't think so. They have registered no interest or objection to what we have proposed. I think that's telling. We're not in Enos Park. We are separated from them by 9th Street, a corridor which is in trouble along that area. Starting down south of us, when you get down Phillips and beyond, you start to see the blight setting in as you proceed up 9th Street. And if you go over on 10th Street, it's particularly awful. Enterprise is a rough area. The police report drug transactions over there regularly. They have attempted various means to control that with limited success. and it just happens to be the life we live in. This is the perfect place for Kettle Camp to do what he does with the House of Rainbow. Maybe that sounds like an odd thing to say. It's the perfect place because everybody wants facilities like this not to be operated by my house. Well, there's nobody left over there. They're gone, and it isn't because of us. We inherited this. We are literally on an island separated from the rest of Springfield. Well, sure, you can walk, but we are not in a populated area anymore. It's been decimated. I'm not going to blame anybody. It's just the fact. And this is the perfect place to put this type of an operation. Partly why Dave wanted to be there in the first place. He's no zoning lawyer, that's for sure. He had no idea. I didn't know him in those days, but he took this place to be just blighted area and went ahead with his project. And interestingly, and I think this is an indicator of why it's been successful, none of us heard of it until June of the year 2013. He'd been going for on the order of over 8 years by that time. Why hadn't anybody heard of it? Because there was nothing going on worth reporting at all. That's exactly what you want for a location for something like this. Now, the residents are there 24/7 except for scheduled times when they are allowed to leave to permit them to seek housing or employment or both. The schedule that they follow is in the record you have from below. They are electronically monitored at all times. If something goes wrong, the first people to know about it are the monitoring company. DOC manages that. Dave is simply called. The rules they operate under are the DOC's rules. The manner in which people get there in the first place is the DOC's screening process. Dave has no independent ability to screen people any more than you or I might. But the department knows all about them, and they place people they say are qualified. And we've had a number of them fail in the program and have to go back. The largest amount of police traffic we even have around there is the police picking up parolees who are housed there because the Department of Corrections has terminated their parole and issued a warrant for a parole violation, and the Springfield Police Department comes over to pick them up. Sometimes they even have 2 units come by. And those are the largest number of police visits we even have there. It's a pretty quiet situation, relatively speaking, especially compared to what goes on in some of the other areas not too far away, and which go on in the east side of Enos Park, which they don't like, but it happens. It's a tough area. Liquor licenses are being granted up there. It's another matter, but there are some schools of thought that suggest that should slow down. But there's, I think, another one coming out or pending now for a gas station that has opened up north on 9th Street from where we are. So it's, it's just a neighborhood that lends itself to a transient, somewhat criminal, somewhat mentally ill, certainly somewhat homeless population that drifts around buying liquor, cigarettes, and other drugs and such in small quantities, and living off the land, so to speak, and poaching and squatting in homes that are empty, and
Mr.
busting into
Mr.
ones that are
Hamel,
boarded up.
Can you sort of wrap up here?
I wish that we could hear a little bit more from the department. That's not going to, corrections, that's not going to happen. I'd like to point out, in wrapping up my own remarks, and I'd like the people that have come to be permitted to speak following me, if that's the appropriate order. I'd like to simply point out that this, I believe, has been a very well-operated program for a long time. It has worked well, It has kept people off the street and out of the homeless scenario, and provided an orderly way for these people to get to the private sector again and restore their lives. Some fail, most of ours don't fail, but some do. As to the technical issue of it should be R3, I think, and I've always thought that R3 with the CPU would be appropriate, even though there's no proper definition for what we do contained within the definition of rehabilitation home. Let that pass. I just should state that our alternate suggestion of R2 was an accommodation to concerns expressed by the Enos Park Association, because they were fearful that density would increase, literally building density could increase if it were R3, which is theoretically true except for the fact that it is going to be a railroad. And I don't see anybody building a motel or hotel on 10th Street if you turn any of this property into R3. It just isn't going to happen. And the other thing that we did as an accommodation and to share their concern was that we asked the council to attach specifically a condition to our zoning that would preclude the placement of sex offenders. Now, I can't speak fully to the Class X matter that Chris Tylen brought up, except to note that I'm told that there's some percentage, it's not very big, but it's a percentage over time of people who have Class X have been through the program, Chris. I don't know the exact number, because there's been no opportunity to check that out. But sex offenders was the biggest bugaboo that some folks were concerned about, and the fact that the man who got entangled with this woman who died in June, had been a convicted sex offender, drove that concern and drove that discussion, which happened with the Enos Association and Alderman Conman, and that resulted in that being placed in there. I think it'd be appropriate to allow this business to continue, understanding that a negative result will be to end a tax-paying entity in Springfield, put a Springfield resident and his family out of any kind of gainful employment, and perhaps leave them to public assistance. I don't know what will become of them, but it can't be good. I'm going to let Mr. Kettlecamp speak to that. At this point, I have a list of people who are here, and, well, you're going to be called up to speak. You are Harold Jackson, are you not? I was going to invite Mr. Harold Jackson as one of our witnesses to come up and speak, if that's the way you'd like me to proceed. Have me invite him? Come on up.
Hi, as you may have heard, my name is Harold Jackson, and I am a former resident of one of Mr. Kettlecamp's residents on North 10th Street.
And if you state your name, your address for the record.
Harold Jackson.
Yep, but your address for the record.
My address now?
Yes.
I own a home at 2172 South 12th Street.
Thank you.
In 2006, obviously at the time, Mr. Kettlecamp, he has an exceptional program. He doesn't handpick people that come to him. It's the Department of Corrections that does. And as far as classification of crimes, every conviction goes to a certain classification. Many of the Class X felonies, I'd say more than half of them aren't going to come to a place like that because of the crimes. A lot of people that's never been in the Department of Corrections probably has no idea what it's like to come out and try to become a productive member of society again. It's nothing that you're going to do overnight, and as with any job, anything you do, there's always going to be a bad apple. Like I said, I was there early 2006. I didn't know how long Mr. Kettlecamp had been operating, but due to the programs that Mr. Kettlecamp himself has, in addition to the strict rules from the Department of Corrections, I don't think there's one guy that comes out of there, unless he's not totally together, that wants to go back to prison. In order to be successful, you have to want to be successful. And Mr. Kettlecamp's programs in the Department of Corrections, ability to place you in these places, gives you the opportunity to succeed. But unless you want to succeed, you're not going to succeed. Everyone with common sense knows that. Earlier, there was a conversation about the Department of Corrections possibly not being allowed. I think it would be 100% for the council to consider what the Department of Corrections has to say concerning these places that they've relied on Mr. Kettlecamp to keep up and to help introduce people back into society. Like I said, unless you've had a family member or a friend who's someone who's been to prison and know them, really know them, and heard what it's been about. And unfortunately, the crime that I was convicted of was considered a homicide. It was an accident, but it did happen, and I'm stuck with that for the rest of my life. And I'm very remorseful. But I was provided a chance through Mr. Kettlecamp in the House of Rainbow to find a way to come back and do the right thing. Now, I am a homeowner. It's taken, 7 years, but I do own a home. I'm a productive member. I do everything I can to pay my bills, and et cetera. And I give a lot of that credit to the programs like Mr. Kettlecamp's. And I think it would be entirely wrong to not allow the Department of Corrections to come in and explain the situation or help you better understand how they handpick the people that Mr. Kettlecamp would house in his properties. So, like I say, I won't drag on, but Mr. Kettlecamp has an exceptional program there. You have church. It's not an option. You go to church, whether you're atheist or not. You have everything you do, you have to fit in. Otherwise, they're going to take you back. You're going to go back. And if you're a grown individual or want to become a grown individual, you're going to make it work. But like I said, with your job or anybody else's job, you're always going to have a bad apple. So don't let that bad apple run. Something that's good for the community and everybody around it. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr.
Mayor,
Jackson.
could I ask the gentleman a
Sure.
question? Sir?
Mr. Jackson?
What is the, so you have a job, you're employed, what is it that you're?
Actually, right now, my employment ended. I had a Harold Jackson Services, whereas I did any type of maintenance. I'm considered handicapped at the time, so disability is, I don't have it yet, but that's where I'm headed. But I do keep up my own home and et cetera, so.
Thank you.
But I have lengthy employment and references.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then I'd like to ask Jermaine Davis to come up. He's right here. Thank you, Jermaine.
My name is Jermaine Davis. I live at 1016 North Rutledge, Springfield, Illinois. I once stayed at Miracle House of Rainbow, 923 North 10th. It was great, you know. I got out of prison, I learned, I moved on. How many times can we do that? Get out of a terrible situation, learn from that situation, and really move on. There's not too many times or situations we can do that, small or big. Sometimes we turn a small thing to a big thing that should have been addressed when it was small. Now it became big. Look at it, you know. It's not his fault, the zoning. He should have been told. He don't know that, you know. But the thing out of that, if you take away that, where did these people go? Tower Refuge can't house all of them. Who's to say Tower Refuge is correct for everybody? Just like DOC is supposed to coordinate everybody to their appropriate place. There's a point system. Somebody slipped up. Not to blame DOC, most definitely not to blame that man. He's not in charge of who he can pick to come or go. You're messing up, he notifies, DOC, you're out of there. He give you a chance. Calm down. Go to church. Look for a job. Work something out with your family. Everybody gets a chance. It's what we do with that chance. I just did it 11 years. One sitting, first time. I messed up royally. No one wanted to hear me, no one wanted to house me, but him. I got out. Sad to say, I'm not working, but I'm not in jail. I haven't robbed any of you or did anything to any of you love because of him. He sat me down. You don't need to do this. You don't need to be like that. Think. What else can you do? You like cars? Yeah, I like cars. Do what? You like clothes? Go look for a car job. Go look for a clothing job. Go do something. Something that you can speak well about. You know? Take an interest of what you like and apply that to your life and how you want to accomplish yourself. And it's weird. From the moment you're released, it's no, 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 no. No, I can't be around certain family members because they're possibly on parole or possibly not good for me. No, I can't go here. No, I can't go there. If I can't go here or there, where can I go? Every now and then, I need a reminder, somewhere to talk to. Hopefully, gladly, he'll pick up the phone if you need to talk. I need someone to talk to. I might need somewhere to go, to walk past and look like, man, I came out of there, and I'm not trying to go through that again. No. Who's going to be there to tell us that? I've never sat down with Tower Refuge, not to dirty their name. They're good people because they're trying to help. They're trying. I never sat down with them. No one never said, grab me by the shoulder. What's wrong? No one did that but him. Nobody. Nobody gave me a chance. Nobody gave me a ride here to go look for a job. No one gave me a bus token there to go do that. Nobody did nothing. And you may hear the crack in my voice because it's emotional. It's very emotional. I had nothing. I had nowhere to go. I had no one to call. That man helped me get in contact with my family, brought us back together. You know, he did more than family would do. It's my new family. You know? Who else can I call? Today, I need a ride. I got to go to, let's just say, well, we've been there. I got to go to the unemployment office. I just need you to drop me off. He'll drop me off. But guess who was out there waiting for me to come back out, to take me back to where I need to be? Mr. Kettleton. More than what he's supposed to do. More than what he's supposed to do. All he has to do was point me that direction. Unemployment is that way. And that was it. He don't have to burn his gas money. He don't have to sit and waste his time and wait for me to make sure I'm okay and I'm getting back and forth to my destination. He doesn't have to do that. You know, no one's checking him and watching him do that. No one is. He's doing that on his own. No one's all over his shoulder telling him, watch him, watch him. He's doing that on his own. He's got it to the point, he got me watching myself. I'm watching myself before I react and mess up. I gotta be conscious 24/7. 24/7. I can't sleep unconsciously. I can't be unconsciously. Whenever I become unconscious, I'm unconscious. I need a program like this. I'm not the only person that needs a program like this. Springfield needs a program like this, believe it or not. They really do. I'm not your neighbor. I don't live on 10th Street anymore. But I walk through there because of that reminder I need every day. I do. I don't see the people in the halfway houses or the transitional houses, the one out there on the porches, making the loud ruckus. I see people coming out, looking at the noise as people drive by with the loud noise, the music. People walking half-dressed, walking to the liquor store down the street, which is no association to the House of Rainbow. All that traffic comes from the area of the past. People coming back from wherever other area they ran to in Springfield because that place was so hot from the police that they had to flee from that area. Now they're back. Now he's catching all the backdraft from people that done did something 10, 20 years ago. He might be catching backdraft from something I did 10, 11 years ago. And I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
The next gentleman who is asked to address you is Mr. Jim Sullivan. He's seated right here. You're welcome to ask him. I am informed that he's a resident of 8th Street and actually on the Enos Park side, and he wants to speak to the historic conditions of the area that the Kettlecamp properties are located in.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Jim Sullivan. I live at 1112 North 8th Street. I moved back to the north end of Springfield when I retired in '05. I'm born and raised North Ender. I've seen every part of that north end and what it was and what it is. I'm here to support Dave because of what he's done and the way he treats his clients, whatever he calls it. He treats them with respect. He has the authority to drop the drop the boot on them right now when they're wrong. He does it. He's improved that property over there, like's been said. And there's a lot of things here that's been said that I'd like to reinforce. A couple of things that I don't think is right about what's going on with this on the zoning part and on the treatment of Dave. Number one, I don't think it's right to just arbitrarily take his livelihood away because you think it's the right thing to do or whatever the reason. Susie is also a North Ender. She's lifelong. We've known each other since babies, I guess. She made a statement here that's right. Are these houses zoned right or not? And if they're not, why did they go so long? And Alderman Cameron and I butt heads a lot. We can argue pretty good, and he knows I walk away mad at him sometimes, but he tells me that it's not the city's responsibility to let people know they're in violation. And I understand part of that, but I don't understand how you can let somebody do the business he was doing and the amount of residences he had or has for 7, 8, 9, 10 years and nobody says anything about it. And the incident that happened with the lady, I know a little bit more about that, and that, if it wasn't that man that did that, it would have been somebody else. That would have happened, just because of what was the people congregating in those houses there. Like, was brought up the double murder before. That was just a congregating place for them, and nobody did a lot about it, and Enos Park didn't raise one concern about that. When I had the vacated Hardee's building next door to me and all the junk and trash, I asked for help. Enos Park did not help me. It wasn't a big issue until the building that's there now was a residential, 18-unit residential for independent living people. The limelight come on, and here they come, And I just don't, I'm not against their program. I'm not against it at all. I think the intent is fine, but I think there's a lot of things they do that are not right. And this is one of them. They wouldn't, if that hadn't happened and the limelight hadn't come on, you'd have never heard a word from them about this. I don't know whether it's fair or not, but I really don't think you can sit there and justify saying, well, we should have, it's not our responsibility to do anything about that zoning. I think you had a responsibility to do something about that, especially with the type of business he had. I'm closer probably than most of the people here to it. I'm 4 blocks away. I know Dave, as a neighbor. I know him as a friend. I've been to those residences with him. I've seen what he's done with them. I see how he treats the people. And to my knowledge, other than what the police know, as far as a call or two is there, I've never heard a complaint from any of the neighbors. And I know that Dave, when he has a problem with one of them, they're gone. They don't stay. They just don't. He sends them back. And I've talked to a couple of the parole officers that I know, state parole officers. They think he does a fine job. And I just think you're not giving fair consideration here. Silly me, I was going to run for precinct committee last time around. And I was out filling out petitions, and I talked to almost everybody in our precinct, in the neighborhood there. And I had some serious medical issues, and I had to have some surgery, so that took that out. But most of the people in Enos Park don't realize the stuff that Enos Park Association is doing. A lot of them, I'd say there's as many against some of the things that they do as they're for them. And like I say, I'm not against the program. I'm not against the intent of the program at all, but they've done some things that were wrong and are wrong. So I just want to support Dave and tell you that, regardless of some of the things that were said and I've heard, there wasn't anything that bad going on in his houses, and if they were correct. And I think it's just a shame that it come to this way.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
If I could just clarify, I think what I said was that it's not the zoning office's practice to go and survey the city and make sure that every property is, but the zoning, but when it comes to the zoning offices, when it comes to the attention of the zoning offices, attention, and your Director McLaughlin will correct me if I'm wrong, that some property is being used in violation or not in compliance with zoning, then they take action.
I agree. I can tell you a lot more of them, you know, but I just don't think it was right for them.
Have we had Henry Davis around yet? She was not here yet? You want to speak? Well, we may be done because if they aren't here, we're finished. We have two people who notify us by phone that they're on the way, but they're working and they're...
Mr. Emmel, if he wants to wait till the end, there's plenty of people here from the opposition who haven't had the opportunity to speak yet. He can wait till the end.
Yeah, I didn't know how you wanted to handle it. If you'd like to take some stuff out of order.
It's fine, you can wait.
And maybe our other two people will take. Okay, then at that point, I will back off and floor to the opposition. Is that the directive from the chair? Thank you.
Do we have anybody that signed up per se? Okay. Okay, Mr. Combs, and after Mr. Combs, if there's anyone else who would like to address the council, they're welcome.
My name is Steve Combs. I live at 821 North 5th. I'm here representing the Enos Park Neighborhood Improvement Association, and I'm speaking against the request to change the zoning. 3 years ago, this council approved the Enos Park master plan. 2 years ago, since then, we have been coming back and seeking your support in getting TIF funds to improve our neighborhood. I approach you as homeowners or as individuals who have taken ownership of our neighborhood, maybe more so than any other neighborhood in the city. All the things that you've done in supporting our efforts to try to revitalize the neighborhood and draw new homeowners and change the conditions that Mr. Emmel so adequately described as the blight surrounding these particular properties. During this 2.5-year period, with your support, we've been able to acquire 81 properties. Of those 81, there are 37 that had structures on them, had homes on them. Of the 37 structures, 24 of them now have new owners. And of the 24 new owners, 19 of them are single families, some of whom were here earlier, but they have had to go home. They have jobs tomorrow. The kids weren't quite ready for the debate that's ensued here. But they are single-family, owner-occupied families, individuals, groups. And that has been the primary thrust of the master plan, is to take these blighted properties, try to turtle them around, try to revitalize them, but revitalizing them with people who own them, who take ownership of them, who take care of them, who improve them. Okay. The request before you is to change R2 to R3. It couldn't be in any more an opposite direction we're trying to go. The contracts that are signed by the people that secure the properties that we've acquired with your help, sign them knowing that it's going to be single family and it's going to be owner occupied. And even when they move, that contract is tied to that property. And it's going to be single family, it's going to be owner occupied from the next occupant. They're not going to change it back into a boarding property. They're not going to take the duplexes that we've converted into single units. It's going to be single family, owner occupied. We would like to see the whole neighborhood R1. So when we're talking about changing from R2 to R3, I mean, it blows our mind. we've already touched on, the alderman himself has drawn the attention to the potential crimes and not potential, the realities of the crimes that have been committed there. We certainly talk about safety, but I don't know that safety is the issue with you folks. The issue is changing R2 to R3. And that's what we're against. There's been reference made to Enos Park by a number of people coming up here. Not going to get into a debate about what Enos Park does or what it doesn't do. Our goals, as I believe you all know, because we've tried to communicate you, we've dealt with you one-on-one, you know we're sincere in what we're trying to do. And that's to eliminate this blight that Tom talked about. And it doesn't start by changing R2s to R3s and congregating in a high-density area individuals who have had all kinds of problems, such as whatever X is. But it sounds like X isn't good. So we'd appreciate your support in not supporting their request for a change of the zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Mr. Mayor, I have just maybe a question or two for maybe the alderman who represents the area or your administration. I've heard differing reports out there about crime statistics in that neighborhood. I don't know if if the neighborhood police officer is here that could speak to that, or
Officer Arnold over there.
or the chief, or the acting chief.
Yeah.
Chief Wenzel, just maybe a couple of questions, just maybe crime statistics in general, and then two, crime activity at the properties that are in question to the zoning change tonight.
Well, obviously, I didn't bring the stats for the whole general area.
Okay,
So
sure.
obviously, as has been stated here, it's an area of blight, it's an area of transition that people are working together to stabilize, including ourselves, working with the different associations in the area, as well as the residents and the partnerships we've developed in those areas. I did run the calls for service for the actual properties in question. If I take out the enterprise address, since that's been withdrawn, if my math is right, we're looking at 44 calls for service with 11 arrests for those properties, and that would have ran from January 1st of 2013, year-to-date today.
January 1st of 2013 to
That
date?
is correct, sir. So a little over a year and 3 weeks approximately.
Can I ask a question? Can you tell me so there were out of 44 calls within a year time frame, 11 arrests. What's the nature of the call? Excuse me. Thank you, Alderman.
Without going through all 44 calls, there's there's a wide variety of calls. There's domestic batteries, there's criminal sexual assaults, there's warrant arrests, there's disturbances, patrol investigations.
Okay.
So there's a variety of calls at those houses.
All right, thank you.
Did you, if I might, did you get the surrounding area?
No, I didn't. I ran just those properties.
So just those properties?
Yes, sir.
But if, what I'm listening to, Tom Emmel, he's saying the property's behind, and I remember the murders on 9th Street and the activities that were going on in there. It would be interesting to see what the police calls from that area would be compared, and it sounds like to me, if my memory serves me correctly, some of those calls were by Department of Corrections, by the call from Mr. Kettlecamp saying these people don't fit in here and they need to be removed.
That very well could be correct, and it could also, I know that some of them were parole warrants, and when there's a parole warrant, you have to ask the OC why they issued that parole warrant. Based on my experience, parole warrant is usually issued because somebody's not in compliance with something that they were supposed to do, some kind of term or condition of their parole. I can't tell you what those violations were. They'd have to answer to that. It's no secret that area, especially on 9th Street, again, it's an area in transition. There's obviously issues in there. To say that his properties are any worse than any other property, I can't say that.
Is the neighborhood police officer here?
Yes, he is.
Could he come up and is he for this, against this? Is it helping that area? Because when Dave contacted me, I did drive by that, and it seemed to be his properties were clean and well-kept and
I've drove by the properties too, and the properties are better kept, it appears to be, than most of the ones in that area.
And I just wonder what the impact, I mean, I'm listening to you, and I hear those calls, and it's like, wow. But if you remember what Tom said about Mr. Kettlecamp calling and saying, hey, this person isn't fitting in, that kind of fits in with, I'm not going to put up with any foolishness. I'm making the call, you're out of here. I'm really interested in the impact on the neighborhood. And I think Steve said it right, we're here to talk about zoning, not the house. But in all honesty, that does fit into what we're talking about. And I'd like to have his kind of take on, because nobody knows the neighborhood better than the beat cop.
I agree with that. Obviously, Officer Arnold's here, he'd love to speak too.
Mayor, if I may just address something that the chief, you mentioned about crime. I just wanted to call to your attention that you had cameras up by Oscars on Enterprise and 9th a few weeks ago or a month, I think sometime at the end of 2013. And a lot of the neighbors in that area told me that when you had the cameras up, they noticed the crime incident had gone down. And so I think that would be a good reason if we could, to put permanent cameras in that area.
Obviously, when we put cameras up, I think that we do have a positive impact on the area. Obviously, that's something we could look at, obviously.
Thanks.
Joe? And to elaborate on what you asked, Mr. Edwards, obviously, I don't know if Mr. Kettlecamp's called or not. I have no reason to doubt that he hasn't, and that he hasn't been cooperative from what you hear here tonight. I have no reason to doubt anything he has said or the people have said here tonight. With that said, our calls for service that I have here are at the house. There's no way to tell what the people at the house may have done outside of those locations. I have no way to track that unless we had everybody's name that has lived there, resided there, and try to go that route.
Sir? You're the guy in the area.
Yes, sir.
And the question is the impact of what he's doing. I guess I'm kind of saying, is it positive or negative for that area? If you drive by and look at the facilities, you go, you know what, somebody's cleaned these houses up. But if it's negative for the area, and I kind of go along with what Steve said, when you take an R1 and go R2 and R3, you go, that's not the direction we want to go. But I want to know about the impact. Is it, even though it's cleaned up, is it deter? Does it aid? What does it do to the crime in that area? Is it, I mean, you know that area. Is it positive because he's there, or is it negative because he's there?
And by the same token, if you don't feel comfortable in answering that question,
Yeah, I mean,
would
it's
say-
a simplistic
I would just simply
question,
say
but-
that, I have no opinion. I mean, and I'm not, I just.
Yeah, I'd rather not, I don't really have an opinion on that.
I got a question for you, Officer Arnold. You're in pretty close contact with the Pillsbury Mill Association.
Yes, sir.
And John Keller out there. Has John expressed any concerns or problems with those houses?
Yes, he has.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Couldn't hear a word of that last exchange, I'm sorry. Just curious what was said.
I asked Officer Arnold if there were any problems with the Pillsbury Mill Association and the president, if there were any complaints from that association about the houses, and he responded by, yes, there were.
I think the question was, were there any concerns expressed
Yes.
by the president? And
That kind of leaves me in the dark, because I've reached out, we've heard nothing from them whatsoever. I don't know what to make of that. I hope you don't make anything of it, because the way this couch, we have no idea what it said.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very briefly.
And again, if you'd state your name and address, just for
Susie
the record.
Weisberg, and I'm representing Lincoln Park Neighborhood Association, whose membership, the entire membership voted to oppose the zoning change. We're not looking at the use of this property, we're looking at the zoning of the property. you're going to upgrade the zoning from R2 to an R3. The staff recommendation, is at least 3 places refers to it. It says such zoning would have an adverse effect on the area and would be contrary to sound planning principles. It says there is no evidence provided that the development in this area is trending toward higher density uses as permitted in R3 zoning, which Steve told you it's actually going the other direction. And the existing zoning classification is appropriate. That's from your staff recommendation, and the Planning and Zoning Commission agreed with that. The issue is not about the programs, it's about the zoning. And the staff recommended was for denial. And the other thing that really concerns me is the precedent that you will set if you do this. You set a precedent of taking R2 and turning it into R3. And if you do that for all these houses in this small little area, then when it comes to someone else's neighborhood, how are you going to say, what is it about this neighborhood that makes it okay, but when they move to your neighborhood, then it wouldn't be okay? You're setting a very dangerous precedent if you upzone this property. It's just not what a neighborhood who's trying hard to survive and is doing a fairly good job of improving things. This is not going to help our end of town at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council?
I've had 2 people arrive, Your Honor, or Mr. Mayor, that I would call, and that I was going to be able to respond to a couple things I heard. It was very brief. The first person, understanding is now here and available to us, is Mr. Henry Davis. Mr. Davis, other people have spoken, you were on your way, but basically they've all taken their opportunity to tell the council what they think about this, and it's your turn, sir.
Mr. Davis, if you just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Henry Davis. I live at 4928 Ridgely Road, Springfield, Illinois.
Thank you.
I did a lot of work for Dave, and I did a lot of work in that area for at least 10 years. All those houses over there, before he bought them, they was all boarded up. City had put liens and all kind of things on them. Greg Rose bought them first. We bought them at an auction. The lady, she was probably 83 years old, that owned the whole neighborhood, her and her husband, over the years. So we took one house at a time, got permits and everything that we needed, followed the code, and started putting them together. And then I met Dave probably about 5 years after that, after we started fixing them up and putting money into them. And then Dave and Greg talked and became friends, and then after that, we just kept putting money in the neighborhood. But the neighborhood was all run down before we even got there, before he even got there.
Thank you.
The next person I'm told is here is Jay, or spokesman. Gentleman here to speak to Jay Jublit, who's the owner of a business over there. Where is he? Did he get called out or something? I don't know, why don't you go try and find him? I'll take this opportunity if I could to...
And just wrap it up, because I
Yeah,
mean, we've been going
intention
at
is to
this
wrap it
for
up. I know,
some
I very much
time, and you
appreciate
took
it.
up a lot of time before.
Mr. Combs said something about R2 is going in the wrong, R3 is going in the wrong direction. Well, thank you for that commentary on what's going on over in Pillsbury Mills. Number one, it's not in Enos Park. It's not something that has any impact whatsoever on Enos Park because it's not in Enos Park. I generally agree with the idea of not switching from R2 to R3 in what is a residential area. This one doesn't even qualify as that anymore. Secondly, talked about density, which is the main concern. That's when you build up something and take advantage of the R3 to increase the population on the lots. That can't happen here unless you tear down the houses and build bigger buildings. That's not going to happen because it's going to be a railroad. You know, I do a lot of work on investment stuff, and that nobody in his right mind would consider expanding the use of the properties. But another thing that really throws his argument into a difficult position is, says if you allow R3, then the population of these houses, inside the houses, the number of people density can increase. Well, exactly how? They're limited to 5 by the fire marshal per building. Grand total, 20 people, 4 houses. They currently have 19. Can't put any more than that in there. And then besides that, I'd like to consider, is it possible that there are 4 single-family residences in Enos Park that are collectively occupied by 20 people? Of course there are. A husband, wife, and 3 children. Boom. Full house. In an R2. So we're limited to, you couldn't put any more people in there if it was R3 than you can now. And furthermore, this R3 is a transitional thing. I don't really want that, but that's what I'm stuck with. And it's going to be I2, and nobody's going to be living there except trains. As to what Susie just said, she fell into, I think, essentially the same trap. This is upzoning. It's this density argument again. Other than the fact that her neighborhood association is yet further away and has no valid interest in this particular thing. Her concern about precedent leaves out the fact that, as I understand it, the city council decides these matters one by one, and it depends on the area and what is going on at the specific property and what the needs are and what the burdens are, and those are all property-sensitive issues. By granting us this variance, you're not requiring yourselves to turn around and give everybody an R3 who asks for one all over town. That's not true, and it's misleading to suggest that. The staff recommendation, well, it's the original staff recommendation came from the Regional Planning Commission, and I suggest you ask for your money back. They said in their report that the impact of the planned railroad expansion on this area was unknown. That's what the Regional Planning Commission said. That's just astonishing, with the maps already in the paper and everything else about the houses being torn down. They didn't know any of that when it came to the hearing. And if you listen to the tapes, it was an embarrassing moment for them. But of course, there's an impact down the road. And of course, it's not going to be an R2 neighborhood anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. It's a destroyed neighborhood, unfortunately, but the fact. So I ask you not to take too seriously this notion that there's some kind of a density issue, because there simply is not in reality. Have you found him?
With all due respect, Mr. Emmel,
Yeah.
once you have R3, the only reason the limiting factor is to 5 is because of the structures. And if you wanted to sprinkle those and bring those up to more code, you could.
There's no physical space, though.
Yeah, but you could, in fact, put more people in there if you were able to bring that up. If the buildings were, remember this, the buildings are not zoned, it's the property that's zoned. If you tear the house down and it's R3, God knows what you could put up there. So I don't want fingers being pointed one way or the other.
No, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm pointing out.
You can increase the density in R3.
In theory.
Well, you can.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
not theory,
you can do
that's what it's
anything in
for.
theory, but what sort of a mad person would invest serious money building a big palatial?
I know that, but you threw a comment out there and you've corrected them, and I wanted to
Well,
correct
the
you.
limitation of 5 people is a physical one based upon, number one, that it's not sprinkled, and number two, these houses don't have room for that. They're smaller houses. One of them, you could probably put 6 people in tops, but the others are limited. They just aren't that big, and if you've been by that, you can tell by looking at them. They're not very big.
And I've driven by.
There is one that's a little bit larger, the one at 923. Is tall and has more space, but they're little houses.
Mr. Immel, didn't you tell us that the fire marshal had a rule limiting you to 5 people?
The fire marshal inspected the property and said you can't have more than 5 people on here without sprinkling the buildings.
Oh, okay.
And we would not, under any circumstances, sprinkle the buildings because of the cost involved and the fact that we didn't have space to accommodate more than 5 people in these houses. So that's what drove that. But the fire marshal was the author of the 5 limit. to us when Dave started. I wasn't involved at that point. I learned this later. As to the comments that the police chief offered.
Thank you, Mr. Emmel. I think you
Okay.
used your time.
I think he acknowledged, though, my point that if you look at the
Thank you, Mr.
statistics, which we have, the vast majority are parole violation warrant pickups issued by the Department of Corrections, not police calls. My last person to speak is Mr. Kettlecamp. And he would like to... This individual For or against? Against. Oh, can we finish up with can we finish up with the fours and be done? He's the last one.
Yes,
Can we
please.
just finish?
Again, we've covered a lot of time here, and
Yes, my name's David Kettlecamp. I live at 814 East Division Street. I am in part of Enos Park Association. I've been doing this since '05. If I knew that I needed the zoning like this, I would have did it. But I was, I didn't know. I just figured it was, putting people in residence. There's families that's got more than 5 people living in a residence in the style home I got. So that's why I didn't actually do all the research. I did do the research, and I had the fire marshal come in, and they, that's where I found out I couldn't house no more than 5 guys in a house, and if I did, I have to have sprinkler systems. This is my 10th year doing this. This is what my job's been. Prior to that, I used to do excavating. I haven't did it for 10 years. Will be 10 years. I really don't know what to say other than nobody knew anything about this until the incident where the murder happened. And I'm the one who told the police who did the murder. I was the one that told them who did that murder. It wasn't like I was holding back, because I had somebody else in custody at the time saying that he's the one that did it, and I knew he wasn't the one that did it. And that's how this pretty much all got brought up, out of my however many people, 500 some people, whatever it was, whatever the tally was in my 9 years of doing this. That was my one incident. On average, I did 100 to 125 guys a year. I've had a lot of good success rate. And I've had bad success rate. If I ain't able to do this, I don't know where I'm gonna be then. I'm gonna be unemployed. I got a family. I got a 7-year-old child. I got 2 stepkids that I raise. I'll be just like the guys coming out of prison, like pretty much out trying to look for another job. I appreciate your vote, and I don't want to take up no more time because I know everybody wants to get home to their families. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I ask a question? Mr. Kettlecamp, I just want to understand the financial arrangements. Do you receive $30 per day per man in your home?
I get $30 per day per individual.
Okay, so you've got, let's say just for easy math, you've got 20 individuals per day, so that'd be $30 times 20, that'd be $600 per day.
That's $600 per day.
So times 100 days, let's say that'd be $60,000. So times 300 days, that'd be $180,000. Is that correct? Am I doing the math correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be $180,000, and I got to pay all my utilities, mortgages, phones, everything. Bedding, utensils, kitchen utensils, couches, beds, everything, I got to have it fully furnished. Any other questions?
thank you, Mr. Kettlecamp.
Steve Hughes, 816 North 6th Street. Doing the upgrade allows him to put any type of structure on there. And ultimately, our neighborhood pays for it, but the city's going to pay for it. He's going to be out of a job in 10 years anyhow, apparently because of the trash, according to this gentleman. It's a no-brainer. They want to keep saying that, you know, we've got 20 people in there, there's 20 people in 4 houses. 50 people a year are going in there, going back to jail. One reason or another, they're going back to jail. 20 of our kids aren't going to go back to jail, hopefully. But years from down the line, this all pays out for everybody involved, not just Enos Park or Lincoln Park, everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Is there any further discussion? If not,
I'd just like to say, you know, I'd like to commend these ex-offenders who got up here and testified today for turning their lives around. I think, you know, ex-offenders are, I'm sure, the biggest portion of our population that's shown they have a very difficult time getting a job. And the bottom line is that if they aren't given the opportunity to get a job and get reintegrated into society, that in the end causes more reoffense and is actually harmful for society. But my job as the alderman of this ward is to represent the people who, my constituents, people who live in the ward. And it's clear to me that a majority of the people in my ward are opposed to this zoning. So, and that's why I made the motion to approve the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission to deny the zoning relief, and that's why I'll be voting yes on the motion. Thank you.
further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, we have a motion and a second to accept the Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, which is to deny the petition. All those in favor of the motion vote yes. All those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Oh, okay. Motion passes 6-4. That's the end of the zoning meeting. We will move into the city council agenda. Do we want to take a break?
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going, okay. Chair will recognize Treasurer Langfelder if he is ready for a presentation of a financial report.
Thank you, Mayor. The monthly cash report for the corporate fund for the month of December, we had a beginning balance of $7,696,467. Receipts for the month of December totaled $7,347,118. Disbursements for the month totaled $7,006,900. So our ending cash balance in the corporate fund at the end of December totaled $8,036,685.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the financial report.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and second. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed say nay. Aye. Motion carries. You've received a financial report from CWLP. We're not going to have them do a presentation, given the fact we just did the budget presentation, but if you have any questions, you can certainly direct them to Director Hobby. The chair will entertain a motion to incorporate the pre-council first reading of ordinances into the record of this council meeting.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and second. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the January 7th, 2014 City Council meeting and approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Chair will entertain a motion to incorporate the pre-council reading of the consent agenda into the record of this council meeting.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. Chair will entertain a motion to place the consent agenda on final passage.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Discussion, Mayor. If you will count me as a no vote on 2014-019, 020, and 021.
Mr. Mayor, likewise, a no vote on 019, 020, 021. In addition to those three ordinances, a no vote on 2014-004, 2014-005, and 2014-006.
You wish to be recorded as no, Alderman?
That's correct. On 6 ordinances, the 3 that Alderman Corey Jobe mentioned, and 3 additional.
Okay. And I'd like to be recorded as no on 19, 20, and 21.
I think at this point, we might just want to pull those 3 out.
Clerk, I'd like to be recorded as no on 2014-001, please.
Just on one?
Yes.
Same one.
And same with me on 001.
Okay. Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes, those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Motion passes 9-0. Agenda numbers 2011-104, 2012-123, 2012-226, 2012-376, 2013-128, 2013-174, 2013-193, 2013-250, 2013-260, 2013-266, 2013-376, 2013-397, 2013-455, 2013-457, 2013-469, 2013-470, 2014-002, 2014-003, and 2014-022 remain tabled or in committee. The next item on the agenda is docket number 2013-475, an ordinance approving the appointment of J. Todd Greenberg as Corporation Counsel. The Chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2013-475 on final passage.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Discussion, Mayor. Is Mr. Greenberg, will you answer some additional questions, please? As you know, we have a consent decree that the city operates under, a federal order that requires the city to govern itself in certain manners with certain rules. And as you're aware, I trust you read the consent decree that we handed you last week.
Yes.
There's a provision in there that says, quote, "The mayor shall appoint, upon approval of the city council, certain positions." Are you familiar with some of that language that's in the consent decree?
I glanced at it, yes.
One of those positions happens to be your own position. The mayor shall appoint, upon approval of the city council, the city attorney, and it also lists various other positions that are also subject to approval by the city council. For example, under our current code, the police chief, the fire chief, convention, tourism bureau chief, and so forth. The question, and also at City Water, Light and Power, the Director of Administrative Services at City Water, Light and Power, that's a position that requires city approval, city council approval upon the mayor presenting that position to the city, that person to the city for approval. So the question is, what does a city council do when the mayor does not present a position to the council for approval? That seems to be in conflict with the federal order and also with our city code.
Well, it's the leading case in Illinois on the meaning of the word shall is that it means must, except when it doesn't. And that's a quote from the judge who wrote the opinion. I think it's more of the practical problem of what happens when a mayor has not yet found a candidate that he wants to forward to the city council for permanent appointment. Somebody has to perform those functions. And beyond the obvious answer that just, I think this is a political question in which the aldermen would bring political pressure on the mayor in whatever way they can. I don't think there's a way to force someone to perform an act which involves the exercise of discretion. In other words, remember when Lincoln was looking for various generals, and one of the members of Congress urged Lincoln to appoint somebody to be the general, and Lincoln asked, who do you suggest? And the congressman said, anybody. And Lincoln said, anybody might be good enough for you, but I need somebody. I think it becomes that issue of it's within the discretion of the mayor as to when he finds a candidate that he's comfortable with forwarding to the city council for the permanent appointment.
Do you think it's a duty of a mayor to, in a timely manner, go out and find the right appointee for these very important positions?
Yes, I think that's a duty of the mayor.
So when the mayor appears to not perform that duty, what's the appropriate response by a city council?
I think there's, again, it is more of a political issue than it can be a legal issue resolved by the courts.
So under that theory, are we opening the door? Any mayor can step into the mayor's seat, and for 4 years, they can just make temporary appointments, and the city council can do nothing about it? That nothing comes to the city council for approval as far as the cabinet level positions?
Well, the reverse is also possible, that a mayor may continue to forward positions to the city council, and they continue to vote those nominations down. It's a political issue either way.
Okay. I was hoping you could be more helpful on that particular question. A second question is, as you know, we've got 1,500 employees, roughly, that work for the city of Springfield, and about 3/4 of them are covered by collective bargaining agreements. And about 1/4 of our city employees are not covered by collective bargaining agreements. As to the 3/4 that are covered by collective bargaining agreements, the city council approves the pay increases for those city employees. Now, as to city employees that are not part of collective bargaining agreements, we have a practice that the mayor, and this goes back to before you came on board, Mayor Houston, the mayor, by, I guess, verbal executive order, decides the percentage of increase and the timing of that increase for city employees. Now, arguably, you could say, well, the city council put enough money in the budget to permit certain percentage increases, but as a practical matter, we aggregate employees into one line items. We might have 50 employees in a certain line item for their personnel money. Now, if we wanted to really control the budget, I guess we could have 1,500 line items, one line item for every employee, and then we could really control how much each employee is paid. But really, there should be good faith and cooperation and partnership between the city council and the mayor when it comes to what percentage of increase we give. So this is a long way of asking you, in your opinion, would it be appropriate for this city council to pass an ordinance that says that the mayor shall present to the city council an ordinance that sets forth the percentage increase for a given year, the across-the-board increases for the non-collective bargaining unit employees?
I think that's, since there you're getting much closer to the budgetary issue or the budgetary function of a city council, something like that is probably within the discretion of a city council, because that's making more specific recommendations or directives on how the city's money is spent. And budgetary issues are a classic function of the city council.
And lastly, would you have any problem drafting an ordinance that would require all executive orders to be filed with the city clerk, with the city clerk's office?
I think that itself would probably be acceptable, you know, from what I've looked at from the consent decree and what I've seen. I was previously asked a question on whether there could be a possibility of that executive order being invalid if it was not filed with the clerk, and I've previously told another member of the city council that I think that is infringing on the form of government, of the ability of the mayor to be the executive officer of the city.
So you've got no problem with an ordinance, you would draft up an ordinance that would require executive orders to be filed with the city clerk?
Correct.
Thank you.
Further discussion? No further.
Just have a follow-up to what Alderman McMiniman asked you on these temporary appointments. Could the city council pass an ordinance saying temporary appointments can only serve for, X amount of time, and put a limitation on how long a temporary appointment could serve, say?
That may be a possibility.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion vote yes, those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. Motion passes 6-2 with one present, and Mr. Greenberg, we'll see you tomorrow morning. The next item on the agenda is docket number 2014-023, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 74-2-11, authorizing signing of checks drawn down on city funds for emergency passage. The Chair will entertain a motion to place agenda number 2014-023 on emergency passage.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. The Chair will entertain a motion to amend agenda number 2014-023.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. The amendment is simply to correct the ordinance number that was given to the ordinance, and this is simply to add people as signers since we've had some people leave city government. Further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to amend say aye. Those opposed say nay.
Aye.
Motion carries. The discussion of the ordinance as amended. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of the ordinance as amended vote yes. Those opposed vote no. Voting is now open. The motion passes with 8 yes votes and 1 present. Is there any unfinished business to come before the City Council?
Yes, ma'am. Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Greenberg on being our new corporation counsel, and even though I didn't vote yes on your confirmation, I wish you well in the job, and I certainly look forward to having a great working relationship, as great as two lawyers can have.
I'm sure he won't hold that vote against Sam.
Now,
Could have been a little better with a different vote, Sam.
Pardon me?
Might have been better with a different vote, but.
Well, I'm just stating my congratulations to Mr. Greenberg. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, last year, I think it was in November, we had another one of these very long zoning discussions, similar to what we had tonight, about the Helping Hands homeless shelter, and had some gut-wrenching testimony. And in the end, the measure didn't, like the one tonight, didn't pass. But everybody, I think almost everybody, or everybody in this room agreed that we have to do more to help the homeless. And this month, out in the everybody's CWLP bill is a roundup insert, which allows you to sign it up and send it in with your bill payment, and then your future bills will be rounded up to the next dollar, with the change going to the fund to help the homeless. And today in the State Journal Register, there's a letter to the editor in support of that also explains how the program works. So I just ask everyone to, most people throw out these inserts, they get in the bills, but hopefully you take a look for this one, it's coming, and sign up and send it back with your bill payment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I would also just remind people that the City of Springfield is doing a bond sale. We expect that sale to take place this Thursday. Tomorrow, for Sangamon County residents, they have an opportunity to buy bonds if they so desire. The bonds come in $5,000 increments. You can contact your local broker who can arrange to do the sales. Tomorrow, it is only open to people from Sangamon County. On Thursday, it will be done on an institutional type of basis. If anyone has any questions, they can call the Office of Budget Management.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I comment on the bond sale? I've received complaints that there's a complete lack of information about the bond sales. My own broker, he's practiced financial world here in the city of Springfield for 30 years. He's looked into it. He's with one of the listed firms that supposedly will be available to trade with these bonds, and he has no information. I understand the office manager at Wells Fargo had made a similar comment yesterday. And let's face it, the information that you just gave, Mayor, says nothing about the interest rate. I don't believe you gave maturity dates. And I think this is, to be honest, it's a farce, what's taking place here as far as offering these investment opportunities to our local residents and citizens. We asked that this opportunity be available, and realistically, it's just not there, Mayor. So I don't blame you personally, because you're not making these arrangements, but I think there's been a breakdown within the administration, the staff people, and let's face it, we also hired a financial advisor to advise the city on these bonds. And where's that financial advisor helping us with this? And so I think there's disappointment out there, Mayor.
Mayor, if I could?
Yes.
I agree with him. I've had numerous calls from people, and I don't normally get those. But I guess because of the talk about being able to sell it to people in our community and people wanting to invest in our community, that's kind of the same reaction, is we need to get a better handle on how we're getting this out. And if they're not going to be sold till Thursday.
But we're saying, McConaughey, it is tomorrow.
It is tomorrow. Well, see, we don't, I'm getting the same kind of reaction from people that some investment houses are telling them they can't buy them. Some investment houses are telling them they have no information. And if we truly want to invest in our community, and I'm not blaming you either, if we truly want people to take advantage and invest in their community, then we need to get that out there, how they can do that. So we got to break down somewhere.
And it could be with brokerage houses that they've received the information and haven't passed it on.
Could be, but somebody needs to get to the bottom of it and let us know.
Is it correct, Mayor, that if an individual wants to buy a bond, that if he doesn't buy it tomorrow, there may be none left after tomorrow? Is that
then he'd probably be buying it through an institution. Is there any new business come before the City Council? If not, we had one person who had signed up to speak to the City Council, Mr. Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. I'm James Johnson. I reside at 2241 Old Jacksonville Road, Springfield, Illinois. Yesterday...
You could stand straight. It'll pick you up.
Okay. Yesterday, I attended a discussion panel in reference to racial profiling here in the city of Springfield. It had been discussed that not only that these stops were being made on individuals suspected of crime, but there were people from clergy, there were members of clergy that spoke up about it, as well as city employees, individuals that work for hospitals. And all of these people had one thing in common, that they were minorities, and they had been stopped multiple times. And that was one of the things that was discussed at the panel yesterday. I had met with Chief Winslow, I want to say a few months back, regarding a situation concerning the stop made here that was recorded. Samuel Johnson, he was pulled over recently. He's currently going to court about this situation. And one of my suggestions was that there should be sort of like a Miranda card that officers carry with them, explaining to the citizen what their rights are. Because ultimately, the citizen is placed at a disadvantage because a lot of people don't know their rights. So when an officer pulls a person over, a lot of the time, situations escalate because of lack of that information. A lot of citizens don't know that an officer doesn't have to tell them why they're pulling them over. So I can see where conflicts come into play at, where the situation escalates to something more than just a random stop. So I presented this idea to Chief Winslow the last time he and I met, that officers should, City Council should consider passing an ordinance to get officers to carry these rights inside of their vehicles. So when they're addressing the citizen, they can say, hey, it's right here, I have the right to do this. License and insurance, please. There's been several situations with the city of Springfield where there's been settlements that's been discussed on the news where racial profiling has played a big part. And, you know, the city having to give away money to individuals to resolve these matters. So I'm just presenting this idea to City Council to see if this is something that could be discussed with anybody that would be, would be interested in looking into this idea to see if it's something that could be done.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.